Hi BookTube, I'm doing another Poetry Thursday video, and this time we're going to do one of Wordsworth's sonnets, The World is Too Much With Us. The world is too much with us. Late and soon, getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours, we have given our hearts away, a sordid boon. The sea that bears her bosom to the moon, the winds that will be howling at all hours and are upgathered now like sleeping flowers, for this, for everything, we are out of tune. It moves us not. Great God! I'd rather be a pagan suckled and a creed outworn, so might I, standing on this pleasant lea, have glimpses that would make me less forlorn. Have sight of Proteus rising from the sea, or hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn. So this was a sonnet written by Wordsworth back in 1806. And I think the first thing that touched me when I read this was how similar the sentiment I have, or like a lot of people have today, that he had 210 years ago. Like this feeling of getting caught up in the world, get swept along with the current events, with the ideologies, with the opinions, and the fret of the world. It's kind of like you're always in a constant state of commotion, and I think that's like kind of like that feeling of longing to return somewhere. That's the immortal aspect in this poem, and it shares a lot in common with the desire of the poets have when they're writing about the pastoral, like when they see the shepherd caring for his flock. They invest that with feelings, almost like a proto-Eden type scenario where you live in ultimate leisure and your work, your purpose in life is doing good, protecting the weaker ones from harm's way, right? There's like, you wake up to the sun and you go down to sleep with the moon. Kind of this almost perfect life scenario set up where like you're almost incapable of sin because the opportunities, the temptations aren't there. It's this kind of like romantic bliss. Giving our hearts away, a sordid boon. I think the boon is that the kind of utility of detaching yourself from the past and living in the world today, you know, being able to move through different crowds and groups, knowing what's going on, constant being abreast of the new trends, using that to your advantage for your self-interest to move up in the world, sometimes turns away people from reading. Is like, what can it do for me? You know what I mean? I could be spending that time working overtime or spending new time to like making money a certain way that there's no self-interested purpose in that. And it's sordid because the heart is not made for self-interest. Its full potential is to spread out its roots and to love those around it, to love others, and to love the world and to accept it for what it is, both good and bad. And you can't really get that feeling of acceptance when you're just constantly, you don't get a chance to even sit down and think when you're constantly in the, you know, that modern fret. Let's see, how little we see in nature that is ours. You know, that's what you would, once you have come to accepted nature, you kind of make it your own, especially if you're exposed to it a lot. Like, you know, you can listen to the birds sing, to the flowers, to the smells, the sensations. You become something very personal to you, and you interweave those sensations with a lot of like memories, and so they become something cherished. But if you never spend that time in nature, you never develop those connections, and it's just, and some people can't find the time anymore. And once, you know, they come out of work, what's the first thing people do? It's like they want to relax and have leisure time, and it's a lot more entertaining initially to go and watch the new Netflix show or to play video games or something like that than to have that kind of tranquility. So here we see how Wordsworth, when he's in a poetic mood, how he views the world and how he views nature, really. The sea that bears her bosom to the moon, the rising and swelling of the tides. He sees in that the same as the rising and swelling of someone's chest beating, but obviously in a much larger scale, because the moon controls the tides. And then the peacefulness, right? It's not a fervent beating, it's just a peaceful, to the point where like the rise and swelling takes hours. He's kind of like, we see her bare her bosom, like the surface, whereas like the feelings underneath, like the feelings in the heart of someone else, of people, are impenetrable. The depths of their passions are inscrutable. You can't really put words to it. You know what I mean? When you feel a certain way, when it's completely washed over you, takes control of your thought and your heart, you just are almost speechless and you just don't know what to do. That's when love and sorrow are at its heights. The wind that will be howling at all hours and are upgathered now like sleeping flowers, putting soul into these natural phenomena and seeing as he sees and are upgathered now like sleeping flowers, he sees some kind of deity who's come and plucked the winds and collected them before he wants to share them again at a later time. Later he says great God. I mean, he's Christian, so he's implying God, a Christian God, in contrast to the pagan God, to the pagan gods, to the polytheism that we'll see later. For this, for everything, we are out of tune. It moves us not, out of tune, right? We aren't harmonizing with it anymore. We don't see it. We don't view nature in those poetic moods anymore. It's just the sea, water, moving, gravity. It moves us not. It really doesn't, we don't feel it in our heart. We just see it and be like, yeah, that's this ocean. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's windy outside. We aren't compelled like how we're wrought with emotion when we've watched that one TV show or something. Great God, I'd rather be a pagan suckled in a creed outworn. Pagan suckled. Suckled, think about it. It's not just like this touch and go faith they kind of believe in when they want to suckle. No, it's been ingrained in them. It's essential to them. It's what's given them life, purpose, since as far back as they can remember. It's something they were raised with. Becomes that initial touch point when they interact with the world. It's instinctive. When they see the ocean, they think of a god. When they see the moon, they think of aspects of the god. When they hear this is God at work, when they're in nature, when they see leaves rustling and they know they can't see an animal, and you've had that, you see something move and you don't know what it is at first, they immediately tie it to a fairy or to Pan. If they hear noises and music that they can't comprehend, tie it to forest nymphs, dryads, forest gods, things like that, and as their explanation for the external phenomena in the world. And a creed outworn, this is him, Greek polytheism, whatever spiritual truths it had at one time, and moral truths, it doesn't hold them any longer. It's been superseded by Christianity, by monotheism. For Wordsworth, he realizes that feeling of acceptance, of being in harmony with the world, is so dear and so important, not to him just himself, but to our heart and to the way we function as human beings, that he's willing to commit that heresy of worshiping polytheistic gods if he can get to that same end. You see it's a different mean to the same end. If it means he has that wholeness, that acceptance, that loving eye towards nature. So might I, standing on this pleasant lea. So here he's positioning us for the sonnet to end with a proud death. And I say a proud death as in meaning we're going to be given some kind of depth of feeling or landscape or some kind of sentiment that we can really think on and reflect and speculate on afterwards. And so have glimpses that would make me less forlorn. So have glimpses of that pagan past make me less forlorn, right? He wants to move past, not just, he doesn't want to just be like sitting there yearning for the days gone by. He wants to be in that same position as the pagan and see with renovated eyes nature around him. He wants to see it firsthand. See what I mean? Different from, we've moved past. This isn't just him just yearning for the pastoral past. He wants to now embody that pagan spirit. Have sight of Proteus rising from the sea, or hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn. He uses those examples of pagan gods. There's tens of hundreds of them. He uses those specifically because they tie back to other aspects of the sonnet. Have sight of Proteus rising from the sea, tying back to the sea that bears her bosom to the moon, or hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn. I think at first, my first instinctive thing was like hearing the roar of the ocean. It's also, I think, supposed to more closely link to the sound of the winds that will be howling at all hours. So, he links back to that. And now he exchanges the way he viewed those in the beginning through the monotheistic lens to that polytheistic lens. And really, we can have that proud death, so to say, and now have sight of Proteus. Guessing, you kind of see the waves of the ocean. You kind of see shadows and flickerings underneath. We kind of see that's Proteus rising up from the sea. Or hear old Tremblow, right? You can kind of, as if that we think about the source of those winds, of those sounds, and we can imagine Triton blowing his horn. So here I said, we gaze upon the horizon of the seascape, and we see it incarnated, not dressed, but incarnated in her ancient majesty, and our imagination can then wander off from there. I think that's all I have to say. Wordsworth really repurposed the sonnet, broke away from kind of that form that Shakespeare had, where it was kind of like the ideas were, after every 4 lines, they were end stops. So it's like when blah, 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 bam. That's one idea. Then when blah, 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 stop. That's another idea, and all relates to a general theme. Here he has a more general, it flows. It kind of seems as one coherent thought. It's not this kind of like artistic, kind of like building blocks around the theme, but this is just one coherent thought. And you really kind of, I think, move with it. And then he finally he grounds it into a reality, into experiential truth when he places us on the Lee. And now we can see with it for ourselves. You can see, he reintroduces the pauses after the 4th line. But see, now he gives another pause, not until halfway through the 5th line, separated by a dash. It's still tied closely, and it kind of flows until the end, to the very end. So yeah, really definitely one of my favorite sonnets. Always something you can return back to. It's great. This is like almost a perfect sonnet, I think. So yeah, that's all I got to say. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.